for anyone who's joining in right now, we are doing a full 12 hours of different projects, and right now it is 2 p.m. for us. We're starting a couple minutes behind, but we got 2 p.m. We're talking about Nest Quest Go. So for anyone who's a birder, talking about nesting behaviors today, so it should be interesting if you are already into birds or if you're just interested in learning more. So for all of you who may or may not already have a SciStarter and Zooniverse accounts, in order for this to count for 1 million Access Science, it helps because we have an affiliate project right now, which is the Nest Quest Go. And so if you are logged into SciStarter, you search for the project. So Nest Quest Go, it'll show up. And I'm going to essentially, save it to review later, but I'll go ahead and visit it now. So I'm going to continue on. On here, if you have a Zooniverse account already, so mine is EC Giles is my username, so my profile will be unique to me. If I add it to my account on SciStarter, that means that we can track contributions. So I go to my info and settings, scroll down to the bottom, and I'll find your userness, your Zooniverse username, your userness, and I write it in there. And that's all I have to do. So once that's saved, I'm all set. I only have to do that once too. And so I've done all these steps. Click visit, go to Zooniverse, make sure you have an account, use your Zooniverse username and put it on your SciStarter dashboard settings, and then you'll receive credit. So once we're there as a part of Nest Quest Go, we'll do a tutorial first, and we have a guest actually share the real deets with us to be the expert, and then you just start classifying. So this is all part of the 1 million Access Science. All month we're doing all kinds of different activities and projects and events. And so if you're interested in any more beyond today, we're here at the halfway point trying to get even farther than halfway. We're already past 500,000, which is 500,000. So we're in a good spot. But for the rest of the month, you can do all kinds of other things with us as well. I'll go ahead and not end my screen share. I'll go over to the project we're going to do. And I'll actually have Becca, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the project before we pick which active project we want to do?
Sure. So I work at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. I'm a project leader for this project, Nest Quest Go, and I also manage the Great Backyard Bird Count, which is an annual bird event in February. But this is a project that we started in 2019. We have had a very large collection of historical nest record card projects. And these were citizen scientists that had gone out and recorded nesting attempts in the 1960s through to the early 2000s. And the only data we had were these, 4x6 nest record cards, which, as many people I think who are using the Zooniverse tool know, it's very hard to analyze data when it is in that solid paper form. So we wanted to be able to digitize it, and had been watching Zooniverse for a while, had noticed how sophisticated the tool had become, how many people were using it, and there was a lot of success with it. So we said, how about we give this a go and start an effort on Zooniverse to try and get this data into a usable form. So yeah, we've been going, this is our 5th year. We envisioned it would take about 10 or 11, and we are right now on track to wrap up projects on SciStarter hopefully this year. So the tool, Zooniverse, is amazing. It helps a lot of data scientists be able to quickly, arguably, get data into a tangible form by crowdsourcing the efforts of people all around the world to spend some time pulling data off of these cards in a way that we need it to be able to add it to our existing database.
That is very, oh, sorry, you go first, Emma.
Nope, I was just saying sweet. Awesome.
Yes, and also Emma, I know you've been all day, so if you need to take a break, I have lots of questions for Becca. I was actually doing some Nest Quest Go this morning just because I was very curious about it. I thought it was so cool. So let me go ahead and show where it is on SciStarter. I'll share my screen.
Yeah, and I will see y'all later. I'll join in at the very end to do another transition. But good luck. Thank you so much, Becca, for joining us. See you later.
Yes. And yeah, Becca, we can keep this conversational. The main thing about this is I think Emma compared it earlier to like a video game streamer. It's we're just pretty much having fun and doing some science. So really quickly, just so everybody knows, so I'm logged into SciStarter here. You can see I'm in my SciStarter account. But theoretically, if I didn't have an account, this would be a great time to make one. So everything could track back to my dashboard. As you can see, I've had so many alias accounts to test different things. So I'm gonna log into my real one. This is NestQuest Go's profile on SciStarter. So there's some info about it. And there are also instructions here because it's a SciStarter affiliate, which means that the NestQuest Go team has gone the extra mile. So your contribution counts back to your SciStarter dashboard. That's great because that really help us know if we're reaching our goal of 1 million acts of science, first of all, in April. But just generally, you can go back to your dashboard at any time and get some bragging rights about, hey, I did X number of contributions to X number of projects this year. And periodically, SciStarter also offers different badges and things like that in exchange for contributions. So this is just a way to track some frequency statistics back. And the way you do that is once you have created an account on Zooniverse, you would just go back to your SciStarter dashboard and enter your username. And it counts for all those Zooniverse projects like NestQuest Go that have opted to become affiliates. Not every project on Zooniverse is a SciStarter affiliate, but NestQuest Go is, and a lot of other ones are as well. Okay. And then, so I'm here. I'm in NestQuest Go. I'm going to go ahead and sign into Zooniverse with my account, which I also have saved. This would be a great time to make a Zooniverse account, everybody, if you haven't. And here I am at the NestQuest Go active project page. So Becca, which one do you think I should do? Should I do the Wrens one or the Eastern Bluebirds?
The Wren one has more data entry options open right now. So for people that want to do quick entry, there's more options on that. The Eastern Bluebird, the two workflows that are currently existing take a little bit longer. So maybe do Wrens just so that people can see more of a variety.
Yes, let's jump in. Okay, so the mission is transcribe nest records to discover the behavioral patterns of these small, fun birds. Oh, this is amazing. Oh, and it looks like you guys are getting pretty close to complete. You have 79% complete. That's really cool.
Yep, we're getting there. This project's actually been running for quite a while. It's wrens, so it has multiple species in it. So as we've sort of got the data available for different species of wrens, we've been uploading it. So I think this originally launched maybe even 2 years ago, but then kind of we ran out of data and then we relaunched it with new data.
What's going to happen once it's done? What will happen with the results?
So we have a current project at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology called NestWatch, and that was the online version that sort of took the place of this historical nest record collection, except all the nesting data now goes right into an online platform. So we'll be merging this data with that data, and that project started in the early 2000s. So essentially now we'll have the span of more than 50 years worth of nesting data that we're hoping many scientists will tap into and use when they're looking at conservation questions as it relates to nesting birds in North America.
Very cool. So just so I understand, so Nest Watch is where you ask volunteers to monitor the nest of wrens, right?
Yep, or any species of birds they found in their yard. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, and then here with NestQuest Go, I transcribed a little bit this morning, but just to make sure I get it and the people watching online get it too. We're transcribing historical data about wren nests, right?
Correct. Yep.
That's so cool. So you're going to be able to cross-match this historical data with the data people have been collecting for NestWatch, and you'll get a pretty complete picture of what's going on with wrens, it sounds like.
Correct. And what has changed over time, right? Because something that's been happening since the 1960s, we might be able to start to see patterns of changes in when birds start to nest, how many eggs they're laying, how many young are fledging. There's a whole host of sort of scientific questions that we can ask and try to answer using this data.
Yay! Oh, so exciting. Do you have any inklings of what you've initially found out, or do we have to finish the whole data set to learn that?
Well, it's very species specific, right? So we kind of structured NestQuest Go so that we can upload different species and people can engage depending on sort of their interests. So, for example, the Eastern bluebirds are a very beloved species. And actually, people that love bluebirds sometimes don't love wrens because house wrens will actually sort of peck holes in the eggs of bluebirds that they find if they find a nest cavity that they want to take over. So it's kind of funny these two are running at the same time because they can be perceived as sort of competitive species with each other. But yeah, some of the questions and some of sort of the inklings that we have will really be dependent on the species. And we haven't started to do a ton of analysis of the data itself yet, but we're kind of slowly starting to do that and get to a place where we can offer it on a larger scale to researchers.
Very cool. All right, I just had an engagement idea. I think we could, to finish the data sets, get people competitive with it so they could join our team Bluebird, and we can see who can digitize the most data. But it sounds like y'all haven't had any problems getting people to participate so far. It's you mentioned, running out of data the first time. That's great that people are so enthusiastic about the project.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, you guys are probably very familiar with Zooniverse with your work, but Zooniverse has just a super delightful following of people that love to transcribe data from around the world. So we've been able to sort of merge and mobilize that audience that was already captivated by Zooniverse we've brought in obviously a lot of people from the lab who love birds and think this is a worthy effort and something that they can feel sort of engaged with in the comfort of their own home. So it sort of has been a nice little project that we've been able to get a lot of movement on it, mostly because we're able to tap two different very passionate audience groups.
That's so cool. Oh, so exciting. So with the transcription projects, the number one question I always get from volunteers is why can't a robot do this? Uh,
Yeah.
what would you answer to that question?
I got that question too when we first launched this project. And the simple answer is there are aspects of this data that could theoretically have a robot engage in them, and then the vast majority, it would be very difficult. And the reason is for probably a lot of the reasons you use, right? Any kind of data like this, there's very cross differences between the data itself. There's lots of nuance to how people enter data on these cards. And so anybody who knows Zooniverse knows that many projects have tutorials. The tutorial on this project is like a Bible. It's very long, it's very extensive because there are areas where people have to make decisions that a robot would have a really hard time being able to make based on what they're seeing. Penmanship's always an issue, right? So how one person writes a 4 versus another person writes a 4. It's hard to program all of that in. It's a lot easier for the human eye to be able to decipher that and make quality control decisions with that. And the other piece of it, honestly, is the consensus, the power of consensus that you have in Zooniverse. So if you're having a AI system or a robotic system sort of analyze these cards without multiple checks of consensus with different programs, it's hard to be able to say with 100% certainty that that is the data that was on the cards. But you can do that with Zooniverse, right? You can pre-program in it and say that at least 3 up to, I think some projects have 25 people have to actually enter the data the way that they see it, and then you can draw consensus to that based on your own, sort of protocol within your project and tool. So there's lots of reasons why this is so much more efficient for humans. And let's face it, it's fun, it's interesting. I cannot tell you the amount of people who have shared back to me what I find really inspiring about all this, which is I didn't realize I was going to learn so much about birds and ecology by engaging in this project. So it's not just about getting the data, right? It's about engaging with people. It's about helping people learn and understand and hopefully maybe gain a greater appreciation for what birds are doing in their ecosystems.
Oh, that's so inspiring. I love it. I figured your answer was going to be like the handwriting, but it's a way bigger than that. And the consensus piece is so important. And also just the value of this project as an education tool. Okay, so speaking of education, I think the best way to learn is to do. So let's start doing. Which one of these should I start with, do you think? Does it matter? Can I just jump right into Nest Site, or do you recommend latitude and longitude? Up to you.
Yeah, let's do Nest Site. There's actually kind of some fun stuff to learn there, and there's some nuance to that workflow.
All right, here we are, Nest Site. So welcome to our project for gleaning the data on the nesting site. If you have questions or encounter issues as you transcribe, we developed a field guide for assistance. Select the field guide tab over to the right of the screen and the feature will open. Very cool. For this version, we will focus on one section of the nest record card, the nesting site. see the displayed image, okay? Awesome. The remainder of the pertinent data we will capture in the other questions. There were several versions of the nest record cards over the years. The nest site information can be found in various locations. Another reason why a robot can't do this. Use these to help locate the nest site information. Okay, I gotta find nest site on this form somehow. Please pick the answer that best corresponds to the entry on the card from the options presented. Nesting site options will vary by project and species. So we have nest box, birdhouse gourd, cavity and tree, snag, stump, stub, human-made structure like a building, a fence post, a mailbox, a basket, rocks, cliff, blank, other, unclear, not sure. Note that some cards have a notation handwritten in the principal plant or structure supporting nest. This is often what the nest is mounted on. In the case of a nest box answer, the box is generally anchored to the structure that is often handwritten on the blank line. In this case, if nest box is circled, choose nest box. If nest box is not circled, choose the best choice based on what is written or choose blank, other, unclear, not sure. We will merge this nesting data with the remainder of the nest record data. If you have questions as you work, please use our field guide for assistance in transcribing questions. Oh, look at the little wren. So exciting. And out of curiosity, so I know this card, I see it's from 1986. Where are the majority of these cards from?
They're really from all over the United States. Mostly in the United States. We do have quite a few from Canada as well. But I can't really say that there's one state or region that we have more from. They really run the gamut.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, should I just jump in on the task since you're here with me, or should I do the, well, we just did the tutorial.
So you just, yeah, and you may or may not need the field guide for this. I think we can probably just jump in.
All right, let's do it. All right. Choose the best answer for the nest site from the options below. Okay, we got species up here, the observer, there's the locality, the elevation, latitude, longitude. That's another question. There's habitat. All right, we're right at nest site. So it looks like nest site is a nest box. And the principal plant or structure supporting it is a cherry tree.
So you will just pick nest box. We don't actually really collect the supporting structure.
Then I just click done.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was done in talk, I would do that if I was confused about something, right? So if I was like, hey, I don't know what this person's handwriting was, I could click done in talk and then ask for help.
Yep, you got it.
Perfect. All right, we clicked done. All right, now we're on the next one. Nest site, also a nest box. There we go. Then we click done. Oh, so this person is very good and clear handwriting. Also, what's the most interesting thing you've seen on one of these? Like any quirky stuff that's come up or anything like that?
Well, I'm as much a social scientist as I am a biological scientist, and it's really fun to start to see the patterns in terms of the humans themselves and their engagement with this in their own properties. And I think probably my favorite story about the observers is we had two that were they were New York State residences. Both of them, I believe, are now deceased. One of them was actually alive as of last year. And they had an ongoing competition between who could do the most nest cards in a year. And so it's really fun to see their cards come up because both of them were very avid submitters. They both happen to be women. And in both of their stories, it was very cool to talk. I actually got to talk to their grandchildren, would tell me that their mothers would have been scientists if they had been born into an era with which they felt like that was more of an option to them. So personally, I love the bird stories, but I also love the people stories where you see people, even back in the 1960s, who were scientists, and maybe for whatever reasons it wasn't accessible to them to pursue it professionally, but they did it as a citizen scientist. And here's one of them. Oh my gosh, Pitzrick is one of the women who we see in these cards. So I love those stories that come out in this data.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so exciting.
So Pitzrick's grandson actually used to work at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. I think he has since retired, but I was able to talk to him a little bit about his grandmother.
That's awesome. awesome. Have you published that story anywhere? I feel like that would be an amazing, like we could put it on our Discover Magazine website collaboration or something like that if you're interested in telling that story far and wide and, getting these women the recognition they deserve.
Right. We've told it in a couple places informally. We did do a couple of write-ups about it within the Cornell lab. So and actually they both worked. I can't remember if it was an Audubon organization or a more local bird conservation organization where it was published too. But yeah, I mean, we'd love to spread it even further if people are interested.
Yay. Okay. Made a little note to follow up with you. I mean, I would love to tell that story like podcast, VR, Discover Magazine collaboration. I just think that's really, I'm like you, I'm a social scientist, and I always get inspired by people who do citizen science. So
Mhm.
that's so exciting. Okay, so it looks like this one is our first non-nest box. It's in a deciduous tree cavity. Let's see.
So that would be the top one.
Oh, it's not a dead tree. Oh, it's no. If it was live, are nests ever in live?
They can be in life. Yep, they can be.
And they're
Sorry, my audio is a
no
little
worries.
bit.
Would it ever be in a deciduous live tree cavity or no?
It could be. Yeah, it could be in a deciduous live tree cavity too.
Cool. Um, so that
So for this one, it says dead snag. So I would
yeah,
actually go with your top one.
definitely.
Yep.
All right, click done. This box. Would you say nest box is the most common?
Yeah, for these two species it is. So house wren and eastern bluebirds are both considered nest cavity, secondary cavity nesters, meaning they take over holes that they find in trees that are often originally created by woodpeckers or sapsuckers. So this species I know are cavity nesters, and so people that engage with our projects, we generally try to put the three most common answers in the top three spots. But we leave the other options open because it's possible that the species may be sort of it may pick an unusual nesting spot. So yes, these guys, house wrens, you're always going to see them in either a nest box or a cavity. That's just where they put their nests.
Awesome. I love it. All right, let's do the next one. Let's see. This is also in a nest box. Wow, so many. Do you think you'll ever report on the principal plant or structure supporting it, or is that just not as interesting of a research question?
It's not as interesting of a research question, and anybody who would want to know that data would have to do some pretty serious digging because we didn't collect it when we were pulling the data off. When we sort of decided on the workflows, structure, and organization we were going to use in Zooniverse, we looked a lot at a lot of these cards, and we looked at our existing database and said, what do we need to have in order to add to our database? And what is extraneous that doesn't have a lot of research value per se, based on how we currently collect data? And so that was one of the things that got stripped. It's just not a question that a lot of researchers are looking at. And we don't have an easy way of integrating that data into how we currently collect Nest Watch data.
Interesting. That's I'm just what makes worthy of research or worthy of the workflow versus something that wouldn't be as important. I guess like because there's so much out there, how do you all prioritize?
Yeah, that's a good question. The simple answer is I kind of asked the Nestwatch project leader, what do you want and need in order to integrate this into what you currently have in your structures? And that's sort of the first answer. I will say that there is some of the data that we've collected that isn't easily integrated into our database, but we kept it and retained it because we think it could have some value down the road. So it's kind of both. And just in terms of the principal structure, it's just not a lot of these species are somewhat predictable, so where they're building their nests or what they're attaching them to isn't as relevant as some of the other data that we might pull.
Very interesting. So I'm just getting curious because I'm like, this one's from 1984, right? And I think most of them have been from 1984 so far from those folks that you identified. How have I know maybe the answer is we don't know yet. We need to finish up this data set. But how are wrens in 1984? How is their behavior different from the wrens of today? Do we have any clues about their nesting behavior or anything like that?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I would say that we probably will need to look at this historically and currently to give you a more full answer to that. But I can say that wrens are one of those species that generally do well or reasonably well around humans, and so, but as sort of human structure has become more dominant in our landscape, certainly since the 1960s, I would suspect that we see even as many wrens or more wrens today that are sort of building nests in human structures or in and around human habitats. They're one of those species that really quickly figures that out, right? And we sometimes get bizarre nests for wrens that are, in people's motorcycle helmets or, these other kind of strange cavities. We don't think of them as cavities, but they will perceive them to be and build nests in. So I suspect wrens are one of those that we see increasingly their creative use of integrating sort of the human-built environment in terms of how they build nests. Nest boxes are also more common today than they were in the 1950s and 60s. Some of these people you're seeing, like Pittsrick, for example, actually had nest boxes back then and was monitoring them. That's become more popular now than it was back then. So just sort of the frequency of which humans are sort of installing nest boxes on their properties and then really diligently watching and seeing what bird species are using them, I think has grown in popularity. So we may see an increase in sort of the use of nest boxes rather than just general tree cavities in some of our data.
So cool. So I'm just curious because I was never really a birder before I started at SciStarter. I was always part of like the health related research projects or the climate change ones, but I've become increasingly inspired by people who love birds, who go bird related citizen science like NestQuest Go. Could you maybe speak to a second about why you like birds so much and why you think they're a valuable thing to study?
Sure, yeah. I'll just say, Geis is another one. She actually died last year, I believe. She was another like hardcore woman scientist out in Montana we have hundreds, perhaps even thousands of her cards. She worked for Audubon and monitored an actual hiking trail of nest boxes for many, many years and then passed the torch over well into her 90s, actually. She was doing this work. So anyway, she's a cool woman, another neat scientist who probably she actually did study science, but she probably would have been even a bigger player had circumstances been different for her. So sorry, that was a tangent, but so sorry, what was your question one more time? I got distracted by Geis.
I love that. That's amazing. And it's just really inspiring that we're seeing these kind of great female birders of history through this project.
Right. Got
Uh,
it.
your case, right? So we're in the present. Why birds? What about
Yeah.
birds want to study them?
Yeah, so I love birds, but mostly I love birds because I love the natural world, and I'm personally very dedicated to doing whatever I can in the time that I have on this planet to help people recognize how beautiful this world is and the natural ecosystems that we are privileged as fellow animals to exist on. And one of the reasons why I gravitate towards birds is because it is a species that you can quickly get people to pay attention. They're charismatic, they're interesting, their life cycles are fascinating. You literally can find birds pretty much anywhere on this planet. And so I actually love birds as for lack of a better word, tool to engage people in conservation and environmentalism. So I love birds, and I probably became more interested in birds in my 20s when I became an educator and was teaching other young people about how to care and pay attention to the natural world. And since then, it's just grown because I feel that I've seen more people pivot to caring and wanting to do positive actions for our planet because they're doing it in the name of wanting to preserve these species of birds that they find fascinating. So that's kind of personally why I love birds. It's kind of arguably a backdoor into trying to inspire environmental action and conservation for me.
I love that. Yes, birds are the perfect ambassadors for that. That's very cool. And
Exactly.
I would love to speak. I know you mentioned that the woman in Montana has since passed away, but I'd love to speak to some of these birders of history too and learn about why they loved birds, why they wanted to volunteer like this, why they wanted to work at Audubon. Um, just really inspiring.
It is.
I want questions for our friends on Zoom, so don't be shy about getting your questions in the chat. Or you can also get your questions in the Q&A box too. Or if you want to go on audio, I can also promote you to a panelist and you can ask Becca your questions. But Becca, do you think it's time to switch to one of the other classification protocols?
Sure.
Because we have delved into nest boxes. Okay, let me go back. Which one do you think? Should I go for nest attempt?
Yeah, that one's one of the more complicated ones, so it might be nice as a comparison to the nest site.
All right, it's time, everybody. I'm going to challenge myself. Okay, welcome. In this series of questions, we are going to collect the detailed information from this nesting attempt, such as the number of eggs and young. One card represents one nesting attempt. Each row is one visit to the nest by the observer. Oh, you're not lying. This is definitely one of the more complicated ones, but we're ready. We are ready. Flip first. There are several versions of cards. Some of this data is on the front of the cards and some is on the back of the card. Depending on the card you are transcribing, you may have to flip the card to find the data before you can begin. The dots below the image will allow you to flip the card. Or you can view both cards if you click the window pane icon to the bottom left. We are asking participants to transcribe the numerics for the month, day, number of eggs, and number of young. A well-entered card will look like this, with the month and day for each appearing with a slash between the rows. Month of each nest visits, put a slash between nest visits. Day of each nest visits. Number of eggs and number of young will often have zeros, blanks, and check marks or other marks. Here's how we would like those transcribed. 0 is 0, blanks is B, check mark or any mark equals M, 98 and 99 should be entered as numbers. Scratched entries should be included if possible. No need to specify the data if the data is scratched. For the card depicted above, number of eggs and young should be transcribed as number of eggs for each nest visits, put a slash between nest visits. Number of young for each nest visits, put a slash between nest visits. If you get a card with a skipped row, please feel free to only include the rows of data that are completed. No need to comment that the observer skipped a row or to include a skipped row. On the card pictured above, the month, day, eggs, and young would look like this because there are only 3 entries. All right, this is straightforward enough. Rows that are scratched out. Cards that have rows with scratched out data all the way through should be transcribed as though the scratch out line were not there. We would like to retain this data as much as possible. So the correct transcription for this card would be month, day. Okay, awesome. Scratch data should be entered if it is legible. No need to specify the data is scratched. Any data with a mark should be entered with an M. This includes question marks, hashtag signs, etc. Egg/young counts and comments. There are cards where an observer notes the amount of eggs and young in the comments, but not in the columns. These instances are rare, but in those cases, please do not add numerics to the egg or young number of columns. Comments are collected in the comments task/workflow and do not need to be captured with nest attempt data. Instances where observers entered yes or no in the columns for eggs and young, please mark with an M. For data cleaning and consistency, this is our preferred protocol. The above card would be transcribed as egg, MMMMB, young, MMMMB. Want to see the whole nesting record for this nesting attempt? We will only have you transcribe my side of the card in the series of questions. Feel free to flip the card if you want to see all of the recorded data. If you have more questions or encounter issues as you transcribe, you got the field guide. And let's go. All right, so Becca, help me through this first one. Okay, so for the month, it would be 5-5-6, right?
Got it. Yep.
All right, and then for day, we got 20/28/13.
Yep.
All right, the number of eggs. Oh, what'd they say when there was nothing again?
E. E. Yep.
6, 0.
You
No,
got it.
oh, sorry.
You got it. You're doing great.
Yay! And for number of young, there was nothing, right? So I would just put B, B, B.
Got it. Yep. Correct. And that's it.
Yay! All right, I'm gonna try this one on my own. So we got 6, 6, 6. And then for day, 16, 21, 25. And then for eggs, 5, B, B. For number of young, B, 5, 0.
You got it.
Oh my gosh, I feel like such a pro.
You picked it up fast. Well done.
Exciting. Ooh, but this one here's a curveball. We got some comments. Let me just flip it over. This is more relevant for that nest box question. Okay, let me go back to the front side. So month, I can do month. So we have 5, 6, 6. And then we got day, which is 22, 14, 29. Number of eggs is 6, B, B. And number of young would be B, 6, B. But do I need to do anything with the comments here?
Nope. We're going to capture that on the comments workflow.
Perfect. Okay. So I know you had given us some fun tidbits about the people who did these. Is there any, these are the same people, right? Because they came from the other workflow. So same people doing these.
Same cards. Yep. Yep.
Anything cool about this card? Any fun tidbits about the person who did this one?
I don't know MH Smith. I'm sure there is some fun tidbits. I just don't know that particular observer personally. But Pennsylvania, so not too far away. Metal fence post, likely somebody who was monitoring a nest that they either had on their own property or somewhere, in a local park or something that they were monitoring.
That's so interesting. So this person who was monitoring things either at home or in the local park or somewhere else, they were submitting this data to the North American Nest Record Card Program, right?
Correct. Yep.
And they were a volunteer?
Yep. These are totally citizen scientists. That's one of the things we differentiate between this project that's a little different from other projects in Zooniverse. The people who originally did these cards, we consider citizen scientists, right? They were the ones actually collecting the data. And then the people who are engaging with us and transcribing it, we would consider them like a person that's crowdsourcing the data, that's engaged in Zooniverse. Some of the projects in Zooniverse, you're sort of a more active scientist in terms of sort of figuring things out with the records that you're presented in Zooniverse.
That's fascinating. Oh my gosh. And Audubon ran this program, right? The North American Nest Record Card Program?
Actually, the Cornell lab ran it.
Oh, the Cornell lab. Okay, very cool. Interesting. It sounds like the people who were volunteering for Cornell lab, they were just very passionate about birds. So they might have worked for Audubon or things like that as well.
Correct. Yeah. And some of them were researchers. We have a couple of researchers that gave us their entire collection, and they just happened to collect the data on our nest record cards and then asked us if we wanted to integrate it into our bigger project. So some of them are actually researchers. We actually have cards from the original founder of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, Arthur Allen. He was still alive. He was no longer the director of the lab, but he was still alive and recording bird data in Ithaca, New York. So we have lots of his. We have actually the brother of Aldo Leopold, who was also very passionate about birds and monitored birds. So we have lots of those cards. We have the parents of Barbara Kingsolver. We actually got a letter from Barbara Kingsolver because we reached out to her saying, hey, we noticed your parents. And she said, yep, sure enough, my parents were always monitoring birds. So there's just layers upon layers of very interesting stories embedded in these nest record cards.
It seems like also y'all just have a greatest hit of birding celebrities going on.
True.
So that's pretty. Um, who knows, everybody, as you participate, you might see a birding celebrity at the top of your card.
That's right.
Okay, so let's get this months done. And while I get this data in for this card, I really want to get some interaction with the audience. So please, everybody, make my day and ask a and then we get the eggs. Okay, and then we got young, so B40. Done. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. I want to see if any questions have come through. Come on, guys, you have to have some questions. Fine. We'll go to the Zooniverse talk feature then. I bet people have cool questions there. So
Yeah,
I am,
lots of interesting questions come in through talk.
yeah, let's see what people are talking about. Interesting. So we got image discussions. So let's check that out. And then, oh, interesting. Someone posted something about an hour ago. Oh, this is interesting. Young
Katie
and Ken.
Twelve is one of our devoted transcribers. She's amazing. And she's just noting that there was dead young in the count. You can see hashtags there. We have a certain collection of hashtags that if people see them, they hashtag the card for us so that we can do something unique depending on what the hashtag is. In this case, we don't want dead young numbers in our final result number because we only want to count live young, not dead young. And so our algorithms and scripts will sort of deal with the dead young count cards separately than they will the other data. They'll kind of pull them out and analyze them a little differently. So Katie has been on our project for years and is a very devoted transcriber. And so she will quickly be able to see, oh, yep, this person put young, dead young in the count number, and I need to hashtag this card.
That is so interesting. I love it. It's cool. Do you have a lot of other kind of super volunteers who have been working with you for years and years?
We do. We do an update through Nest Watch or Nest. Yeah, we do it in our annual report for Nest Watch every year, and the numbers probably won't surprise your audience. There's about 10 to 15 people who have transcribed. I kid you not, more than 100,000 Nest record cards, and then down from that, there's several hundred people who have transcribed at least 10,000 or more, and then down from that, there's thousands of people who have transcribed at least 1,000 of them, and so on and so forth. So we have a very amazing pool of about 10 to 15 people who we consider our super users that make sort of transcribing Nest record cards a part of their daily life. And they generally do literally log on every day and spend a little bit of time on our project and other projects. We're just one of many usually in Zooniverse that they just happen to like. They figure out the workflow, they find the workflow that they like the most, and they sort of just go to it as a part of their general day.
That is so cool. I love how devoted people are.
Yes. And it's a community. I mean, you talk about the observers, but the people who are actually pulling this data off have created their own sort of micro community where they're making observations, less so now than I would say the first couple of years that this project was launching and we were trying to like understand these cards a little bit more. And there was a lot of back and forth about who these people were, what was going on with the birds, et cetera, et cetera. But now that we've been running a little longer, it's there's a little bit less of sort of back and forth between the actual people transcribing the data than there were when we originally started.
Got it. Very interesting. So I'm just going to click over to the results tab since I know we're nearing the end of our live stream together. So it looks like you all have completed quite a few different projects and you have some pretty interesting annual reports. Could you tell us a little bit about them and some of your results so far?
Sure, yeah, I am embarrassed to admit that I haven't updated this page for this project. I should put that on my list to do because we do have it updated up until 2023. I just didn't drop it in yet. But yeah, and so overall the project has just shy of 300,000 Nest record cards. and that's for all species across North America, so United States and Canada. And we have about outstanding, we have about 30 or so thousand cards that we're still kind of wrapping up and finalizing, and we have about 100,000, 120,000 cards that we've actually integrated into our database. So we're over the midway point, and depending on how fast sort of cards transcribe this year, we may get to the end of our actual transcription in Zooniverse. And then, as you guys can imagine, my job is to take the data out of Zooniverse. We run several scripts through the data to make sure that it's cleaned and ready to be integrated, and then we put it into the NestWatch database. And then from there, we, share that data with researchers. It's actually publicly available on the NestWatch page. You can download the data in real time for scientists that want to actually get their hands on this data. And the largest collection we have is the eastern bluebirds. We have over 40,000 nest record cards of that particular species. They're a highly studied species too. Especially the western bluebirds and the mountain bluebirds were pretty threatened there for a while, and due to which you can see in this data actually, due to sort of a strong push to starting to use nest boxes in the western states where those birds are, we've seen the numbers of those populations start to climb back up. So yeah, there's lots of really fun, cool usually very species-specific stories that are embedded in these collection. American robins, as you can see here, is another big project. We have almost 20,000 nest record cards available for that particular species. So some species we have lots of cards for, and other species we only have, a couple of cards for.
So interesting. So, and that's really cool that y'all are almost all the way through your transcriptions. You mentioned running some scripts through the data. Can you tell us more about that process? That's so interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I am not a data manager by trade, so I've kind of had to learn this mostly with the help of our programmers here at the lab that actually created the scripts. But as you can imagine, we try to set these projects up so it's relatively streamlined, but there's going to be errors that exist, and before we can kind of use the data, we have to kind of clean it, right? To make sure that it's really clean. And we have to run the data through our own consensus rules that we've set up. So there are critical fields such as year, such as location, such as month and day, that without that data, the record really means nothing. Things like nest site, believe it or not, is not critical. We know enough about birds that if we didn't know whether it was nesting in a nest box or in a tree, that doesn't make or break the record. But if we don't know what year that bird nested or what month or what day, that data becomes sort of not as relevant. So a lot of the scripts that we have in place are not only to clean the data once it comes out of Zooniverse, make sure that it's tight, but also to run our own sort of consensus scripts to make sure that the essential data for all of these records that we're going to integrate into our database, all of the data is there and available for use. So there's a lot of sort of layers of it. And then we also have, you were mentioning the superstar transcribers. We have some rules in our scripts that say, for example, if KD12 says that the answer is this, and it was maybe right on the edge of consensus where we said at least 60% or more of the answers said X, Y, or Z. If Katie says it was X, Y, and Z, then we push that card through because she knows our project. We've identified her as somebody who really knows how to transcribe data cleanly and well. So we kind of nudge that card over the finish line. Because as you can imagine, any researcher who's going to use this data is not going to go back and look at these cards. So we need to really make sure that what we are putting in our database is what is on the cards, so that we don't have to burden the researchers with either weak data or data that's not accurate. And so we sort of have rules in place within our scripts to help ensure data quality.
That is so cool. Yay. Well,
Hey.
I have fun today. I want to give the audience one last chance to ask questions. So audience, get those in the chat or put those in the Q&A box. And just in case they don't have any questions, because Becca, I think you really covered pretty much everything and gave us a really great overview of the project and got us started today. Is there anything else about the project that you think people should know?
I guess I don't know 100% who your audience is, but this is a great activity that I've seen very effectively done with educators. So I would say at least middle school, maybe, unless you're really hands-on, maybe upper elementary, but definitely middle school and up, just in terms of reading level, in terms of following directions and so forth. So teachers, if there are any teachers in the audience, this is a great way to, you could do bio blitzes with this and do, or end of the year activities. You're trying to fill time. I've actually signed off on several students who wanted to do this for volunteer or community service hours. I know you guys do that internally through SciStarter, but some kids will reach out to me and say, "Hey, I want to do this." That's another way that this project has been utilized by people.
That is so cool. And actually, so our audience, I would say, is anybody and everybody. Um, it's the anyone off the street, really. But that said, I like that you brought up educators because I'm gonna share my screen again real quick. Um, so we have this feature on SciStarter in your dashboard called a list, where you can create a list pretty easily. So I have a bunch of different lists that I've made. Um, I made one for this retirement community I work with called the Four Seasons. Isn't that a great retirement community name? But they have all sorts of different projects on this list about the environment. And I just know the people at the Four Seasons, which actually is where Darlene Cavalier, founder of SciStarter, is where her in-laws live. So they're a really great group. But I know they would love Nest Quest Go. So I'm gonna go ahead and add Nest Quest Go to my Four Seasons list. It's on a few of my lists, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it on the Four Seasons, add to list. And the great thing about this list, if let's say theoretically I'm an educator, I just made this list for my ninth grade class. If I go to this list and it's a public list, I can see the stats view for everybody who has a SciStarter account and chooses to identify themselves. So for example, Caroline Hewitt Nickerson, I identified myself. The number of contributions since viewing the list are since clicking to join the project would appear here once I add my username in my dashboard. So like if you're an educator and you want to keep track of a bunch of different contributions for projects and give your students credit for Nest Quest Go and other projects, add it to a list. It's a SciStarter affiliate and you'll be able to keep track of all that good stuff.
Very cool. That's a neat feature.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Becca, if you ever want to set up a list, let me know. Because I know y'all have you collaborate with other projects too. It's a great way to share it out with educators and give them a way to keep track of what their students are doing. Educators are anybody, right? For the Four Seasons program, I wanted to create this list. It looks like my Four Seasons people actually haven't made accounts, but that's okay. I forgive them. It looks like Pam and Alan did. Shout out Pam, shout out Alan, but no one else has. But if I wanted to get really strict with it and assess the impact of the program, that'd be super helpful. If you run a corporate volunteer program and you want to keep track of some stats, the list, and adding SciStarter affiliates, which are those projects like Nest Quest Go that have gone the extra mile to help us track the number and frequency of contributions. If you add affiliates to that list, you'll be able to track those stats. Non-affiliates, you can't track the stats, but affiliates you can. I think that's pretty much everything today. Unless Becca, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
No, thank you for having me, and I think it's great what you guys are doing. It's really inspiring to see all the projects and people that are reached and impacted by your work.
Yay! Well, thanks for joining the party, Becca. We'll set you free and we'll see you next time. And I'll be in touch about those unsung heroes of birding history. I think that will be a really compelling citizen science story.
Cool. Sounds great. Thanks for having me. Have fun.
Bye!
And for those of you still on, we're going to report this event. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen again to show off what we're doing. So reporting after each hour, we're going to make sure that we report who was here or how many were here. So right now, including Becca, how many were there total?
We had 13 at our highest point.
Okay, let's do 13 then. Because that includes panelists too, so that does count. Let's do Emma G.
Yeah, because my contributions were real. You all were there with me. You saw me get those nest box annotated. You saw me annotate the number of birds and eggs and whatnot.
Exactly. What was I gonna say? Okay, what hour are we on? Is this number 4 or 5?
Oh, I don't know. It's almost 3 o'clock, if that helps.
It does, except I don't know how much 1, 2,
One.
3, 4, 5. It's the fifth. Awesome. Fifth one. Ah, wrong thing. Okay. Hour 5 of the 12-hour Palooza. Boom. Okay. Estimated acts, I'll just write it as the same as our people because it's all about participation in this case. And then we'll write Becca, Caroline, Emma, and then anyone on here who wrote in the chat. If there was anyone, I don't know if there was. Okay, cool. I'll just write our names for now since they did not approve or disapprove. And then it was NestQuest Go. Woohoo! Hour 5, and then submit my reward, I think. Yep, we're all good. Submit. Awesome. And then we can head into the next project. And I think, Caroline, you're gonna be back at Manatee Chat. Is that right?
Yes, I will. I'll be back.
Sweet. Well, in that case, you can head out if you'd like, and then we'll catch you back there then.
Yay, thank you. See you soon.